90,000 people in Wembley Stadium think they're watching a fistfight. They aren't. They're watching a masterclass in premeditated framing. August 10th, 1974. The Charity Shield. Leeds United against Liverpool. The golden showcase of English football. 57 minutes on the clock. The ball is 30 yards away, completely out of play. Liverpool's golden boy, Kevin Keegan, turns his back to trace the line of the attack. Out of nowhere, a fist connects straight to the side of his face. Clean, deliberate, completely unprovoked. Keegan stumbles, clutching his jaw, eyes wide with utter shock. He looks around for the ref. The referee, Bob Matthewson, didn't catch the full connection. He saw a slight tangle of arms. He jogs over, pulls out a yellow card, and gives the aggressor a gentle tap on the wrist. The man holding the smoking gun? Johnny Giles. He doesn't argue. He doesn't roll on the floor, pretend injuring himself. He just nods, adjusts his socks, and walks away completely clean, calm, cold, unbothered. Keegan's blood is boiling. His brain is entirely off the match. All he wants is blood. 2 minutes later, Keegan sees white and charges blindly into the nearest white shirt he can find. That shirt belongs to Leeds captain Billy Bremner. A brutal, swinging brawl breaks out on the pitch. Punches thrown. Shirts ripped. The referee has no choice. Red card for Keegan. Red card for Bremner. Both men stripped of their jerseys, marching down the tunnel in front of millions of viewers on live television, facing monumental 8-week bans and record-breaking fines. And where was Johnny Giles during the chaos? Standing 20 yards back, hands on his hips, watching the fallout like a man who just set a house on fire, tossed the match into the bushes, and called the fire department himself. Just gone. Bye-bye. To the casual observer tuning in that afternoon, Leeds United were a dirty, unhinged team of street fighters. But if you follow the mechanics of the game, if you look past the surface noise, you realize something far more sinister happened on that pitch. Johnny Giles didn't just punch Kevin Keegan. He executed him emotionally. He baited a star player into ruining his own season, left his own team captain to take the fall, and walked off the pitch without a scratch. This wasn't an isolated moment of madness. This was an operating system. See, to understand why the biggest icons in British football history genuinely despise this man, you have to throw out the myth that Giles was just another mindless hard man in an era of dirty tackles. Norman Hunter would hit you through the back of the knees because he liked the noise it made. Tommy Smith would threaten to break your legs before the coin toss just to set a boundary. Giles was different. Giles was an architect, a supreme technical genius, a midfielder so gifted he could land a ball on a 10-pence piece from 60 yards, who decided to weaponize the dark arts into a calculated science. He was a technician who played like an assassin. But he wasn't born that way. He was forced into it by a single, brutal second that broke his world in two. Rewind to September 1960. Old Trafford. Johnny Giles is 19 years old. A prodigy playing for Matt Busby's Manchester United. Light on his feet, visionary vision, pure football intelligence. He thinks the game is played with skill. He thinks talent protects you. Then comes Johnny Watts of Birmingham City. A horrific, flying scissor tackle straight into Giles's lower leg. No attempt at the ball. Just a violent, bone-crunching impact that echoes through the stadium. Giles's leg is shattered in multiple places. The tibia snapped, the fibula cracked. As he lay on the turf at 19 years old, listening to the medical staff debate whether he'd ever walk normally again, something inside his head permanently snapped along with the bone. He realized the brutal, unspoken reality of 1960s football. The authorities will not protect you. The referees do not care about your talent. If you are a skill player, you are prey. I lay there in the hospital, Giles would reflect years later, and I made a decision. I realized you are either a lion or a lamb in this game. I was never going to be the lamb again. When Giles recovered, he came back as a completely different human being. He didn't just return to play football. He returned with a ledger, a mental black book. Every late hit, every high boot, every attempt to intimidate him was catalogued, categorized, and filed away for future settlement. He didn't react in the heat of the moment. He didn't lose his temper and get sent off like an amateur. He waited. He tracked the calendar. He waited until the referee turned his vision, until the crowd was looking at the ball, until the precise fraction of a second when revenge could be delivered with zero consequences for himself. He became the most dangerous type of opponent, a master technician with a terrifyingly patient appetite for cold revenge. Now, let me be fair for a second. Was the football back then unbelievably violent? Absolutely. Referees allowed tackles that would warrant criminal charges today. Skin-tight shorts, heavy leather balls, mud tracks for pitches, and players flying in two-footed with steel-tipped studs. Every creative midfielder took a beating every single Saturday. In a way, Giles's adoption of dark tactics was a pure survival mechanism in a lawless era. But here's where the argument for self-defense falls completely apart. Other players used physical force to defend themselves in the moment. Giles used it as an instrument of psychological control and targeted punishment. He didn't just beat you on the ball. He dismantled your dignity and left you searching for answers. He alienated rivals, terrorized opponents, and even drove his own teammates into quiet, burning hatred. Over 2 decades, thousands of players crossed paths with Johnny Giles. But 5 men in particular grew to despise him, not just for how he played, but for the cold, calculated way he destroyed them. You would think 2 of the most gifted midfielders in Manchester United's history would share a natural bond. You'd be completely wrong. Bobby Charlton and Johnny Giles shared a dressing room at Old Trafford for 4 years, but they lived on completely different planets. Charlton was English football royalty, a gentleman, a survivor of the Munich air disaster, a player who believed the game should be played with grace, sportsmanship, and pure individual flair. Giles looked at Charlton's worldview and saw pure naivety. Giles believed in tactical collective discipline, ruthless pragmatism, and total pitch control. He viewed Charlton's reluctance to engage in the gritty, physical battles as a sign of self-absorbed arrogance. To Giles, Charlton was a superstar who wanted all the glory of scoring 30-yard screamers while leaving the brutal midfield dirty work to everyone else. The tension wasn't explosive. It was ice-cold. Words were rarely spoken, but the friction was visible on the grass. Giles would demand tactical adjustments. Charlton would ignore him and play his own game. Charlton loathed Giles's growing obsession with cynical fouls and gamesmanship, viewing it as a stain on the club's prestigious reputation. When Giles finally forced his way out of Manchester United in 1963 to join Don Revie's Leeds, he didn't just leave a club, he left a rival. For the next decade, whenever Leeds played United, Giles targeted Charlton's space with clinical intensity. He made it his personal mission to prove that Charlton's idyllic view of football was fragile, suffocating him with physical pressure and constant tactical fouling. Charlton never publicly engaged in name-calling, but those close to him knew the truth. He viewed Giles as the antithesis of everything football should be. A brilliant mind corrupted by cynicism. If the feud with Charlton was cold and ideological, the war with Paddy Crerand was hot, loud, and brutally personal. When Giles left Manchester United, Busby brought in Scottish midfielder Paddy Crerand to fill the engine room. Crerand was a hard-nosed, fiery enforcer who quickly became United's heart and soul. Naturally, when Leeds United emerged as Manchester United's fiercest rival in the mid-60s, Giles and Crerand found themselves locked in a direct head-to-head battle for midfield dominance. This wasn't just a rivalry between 2 clubs. It was an identity war. Crerand viewed Giles as a traitor who had abandoned United and embraced Don Revie's notorious dirty Leeds machine. But what drove Crerand into a genuine rage wasn't just Giles's physical aggression. It was his perceived dishonesty. In Crerand's book, if you were going to be a hard man, you stood up and owned it like a man. You took your red card and walked off. Giles didn't play by those rules. Giles would rake his studs down George Best's shin, slice open a player's ankle, and then immediately turn around to the referee with raised hands, looking shocked that anyone could accuse him of foul play. During one famous clash at Elland Road, after Giles delivered a bone-crunching tackle on Best, Crerand marched up to Giles, grabbed him by the shirt collar, and threatened to handle matters in the tunnel. Giles just smirked, walked away, and let Crerand spend the remaining 60 minutes fuming, eventually picking up a booking for an unrelated late challenge. Crerand hated Giles because Giles made violence look like a business strategy. He wasn't emotional. He didn't get angry. He just executed orders with a cold smile, leaving Crerand feeling like he was fighting a ghost who always managed to leave the crime scene before the police arrived. November 1st, 1964. Goodison Park. Everton versus Leeds United. This match didn't just feature a feud. It sparked one of the most disgraceful scenes in British football history. A game so violent it was literally paused by the referee to force both teams into the dressing rooms to calm down. And Johnny Giles set the entire powder keg off in less than 240 seconds. For minutes into the match, Everton defender Sandy Brown, a fearless, proud Scot, collects the ball near his own touchline. The ball is clearly gone. Out of nowhere, Giles charges in, leaping off the ground with studs raised high, planting his boots directly into Brown's chest. It was an unprovoked, brutal assault disguised as a challenge. Brown crashed to the turf, gasping for air. When he got up, he lost all control. He charged at Giles and swung a massive right hook, striking Giles full in the face. Now, watch the genius of Giles's dark arts play out in real time. Giles didn't swing back. He didn't engage. The moment Brown's fist made contact, Giles collapsed to the turf like he'd been struck by lightning, clutching his head, rolling in apparent agony. The referee rushed over. What did he see? He saw Sandy Brown standing over a fallen player with a clenched fist. He didn't see the studs-up tackle 4 seconds earlier that triggered the explosion. The card came out immediately. Red for Sandy Brown. Sent off after 4 minutes. Giles miraculously recovered 3 minutes later, stood up, dusted off his shorts, and played out the rest of the match as Everton fans threw bottles, cushions, and trash onto the pitch in utter fury. The match descended into an absolute bloodbath, with players tackling each other out of pure spite, eventually forcing the referee to haul both teams off the pitch for a 10-minute cooling-off period. Sandy Brown hated Johnny Giles until the day he died. Not because Giles tackled him hard. Brown could handle physical football. He hated him because Giles had intentionally provoked him, tricked him into throwing a punch, gotten him sent off in front of his home fans, and walked away completely unpunished. It was pure, unadulterated sabotage. If you need one single piece of evidence to prove that Johnny Giles was a chillingly patient strategist, look no further than his 7-year war with Chelsea fullback Eddie McCready. FA Cup semi-final. Leeds versus Chelsea at Villa Park. It was a tense, chaotic match. During a loose ball scramble, Chelsea's hard-hitting Scottish fullback Eddie McCready comes flying into a challenge on Giles. It's a bad one. McCready's knee comes up high, catching Giles squarely in the joint, leaving Giles writhing on the pitch with torn ligaments. Leeds lose the match, Giles spends weeks in rehabilitation, and McCready walks away without even a reprimand. Most players would scream, shout, maybe try to hit back later in the same game, get booked, and move on with their lives. Not Giles. Giles filed Eddie McCready into his mental black book under the section, Accounts Payable. 1 year passed, then 2, then 5. Players moved teams, managers were sacked, tactics changed. McCready likely forgot the tackle even happened. Johnny Giles didn't forget a single frame of it. Fast forward 7 full years to 1972. Elland Road. Leeds hosting Chelsea. The ball is booted high into the air near the touchline. McCready tracks the ball, leaping into the air to head it back into the middle. He is completely airborne, fully extended, totally helpless in midair. Giles doesn't jump for the ball. He doesn't even look at the ball. He stands directly beneath McCready, waits for the exact moment the Chelsea defender reaches his apex, and comes up with a deliberate, crushing stamp straight onto McCready's ankle as he descends, smashing him down to the turf. McCready screams in pain, his ankle severely damaged. As the physios rush onto the field, Giles leans down over McCready and whispers something into his ear before walking away. 7 years. 2,550 days. Giles had waited 7 years for the exact physical setup. The precise moment where he could deliver identical physical damage while minimizing his own risk of a red card. McCready was left in utter disbelief and pure rage. He realized he had been hunted across nearly a decade by a man who never let a debt go unpaid. That wasn't just physical football. It was psychological warfare at its absolute peak. Which brings us right back to where we started. Wembley Stadium, August 1974. The feud with Kevin Keegan stands at the very top of this list because it exposed the true, devastating impact of Giles's dark arts on the highest possible stage. Keegan was the golden child of English football, fast, handsome, media-friendly, the superstar of Bill Shankly's formidable Liverpool. Giles was the aging mastermind of Don Revie's ruthless Leeds machine. When Giles socked Keegan in the face in that Charity Shield match, it wasn't an act of anger. It was a calculated trap designed to test Keegan's emotional maturity. Giles knew Keegan was volatile when provoked. He knew that if he could break Keegan's composure, Liverpool's dynamic attack would collapse. And it worked to absolute perfection. Keegan's red card, along with Billy Bremner's red card, shocked the nation. But look at the aftermath. Bremner, Giles's own captain and close friend, took the brunt of the media storm. Bremner was hit with an 8-week ban and a massive fine. Keegan was hit with the exact same punishment. And Johnny Giles? He received a minor fine for a yellow card, played in the very next match, and continued his season completely uninterrupted. Keegan was furious, not just at the punch but at the sheer injustice of the entire system. In his eyes, Giles had broken the unwritten code of the pitch. He had started a fire, let his own captain get burned in the blaze, and walked out the back door smelling like roses. Keegan spoke about the incident for decades with a mix of lingering anger and disbelief. He had been played like a fiddle by a master manipulator. When you stack the evidence together, the Cold War with Charlton, the identity battles with Crerand, the provoked riots with Sandy Brown, the 7-year hunt of Macready, and the Wembley trap set for Keegan, a clear pattern emerges. Johnny Giles wasn't hated because he was a bad player. He was hated because he was a genius who refused to play by the romantic rules of the game. He looked at an era of lawless, brutal physical violence and came to a simple, chilling conclusion. I will not be a victim. He took the dark arts, stripped away the emotion, and turned payback into an exact science. He used the referee's blind spots as his canvas and his opponent's tempers as his weapons. He forced hard men, hard enforcers, and international superstars to play a game where he dictated every single rule. They despised him because they couldn't break him. They hated him because even when they tried to hurt him, he recorded the debt, waited in the shadows, and collected payment with heavy interest. Was he a cynical cheat who corrupted the spirit of the game? Or was he a brilliant pragmatist doing whatever was necessary to survive and dominate in football's most brutal era? Drop your take in the comments below. Was Giles a criminal tactician or just a man surviving a violent game? I read every single one. A like genuinely helps the channel more than you'd think. And subscribe if you want more deep dives into the dark, untold history of football's greatest controversies. Football at this scale is never just a tournament. It's a moment in time,